Welcome to Creepy Corner Stories, where the shadows hold secrets and the past refuses to rest. Tonight, we step into the decaying halls of abandoned hotels, once grand, now empty. Or are they? From eerie whispers in empty corridors to guests who checked in, but never checked out, these hotels hold more than just dust and broken furniture. Some say the spirits of past visitors still roam the halls. Others believe something far more sinister lingers in the dark. Turn off the lights, check your surroundings, and join me as we uncover the terrifying tales of abandoned hotels, where every empty room tells a story, and sometimes the walls whisper back. Let's begin. Story: The Last Guest. They called it the Blackwood Hotel, a once grand establishment built in the 1920s, nestled deep in the mountains. Decades ago, it was known for its lavish parties and elite guests, until one winter night, the entire staff and remaining visitors vanished without a trace. No bodies, no signs of struggle. Just empty rooms with meals still sitting on tables, suitcases unpacked, and a single note left at the front desk. It read, "Don't follow the whispers." The hotel was shut down and left to rot, but some dared to return. Ghost hunters, urban explorers, and thrill seekers looking for a scare. Most of them came back with eerie stories. Footsteps echoing in empty hallways, laughter from rooms that hadn't been occupied in decades, and the overwhelming sense of being watched. Then there was Daniel Carter, a documentary filmmaker determined to spend the night in the Blackwood Hotel alone. He set up cameras, explored the grand ballroom, the dusty front desk, and even the infamous Room 306, the room where the last guest was reportedly seen before the mass disappearance. As night fell, Daniel started hearing it. Faint whispers, too low to make out, but unmistakably there. He followed the sound down a long hallway, past peeling wallpaper and broken chandeliers. The whispers grew louder, urgent. He turned a corner and froze. At the end of the hall stood a figure, tall, motionless, its face obscured by shadows. "Who's there?" Daniel called, his voice shaking. The figure didn't move, but the whispers did. They slithered through the air, circling him, growing into distorted voices, overlapping. Some pleaded, some laughed. Some growled. Daniel ran. He stumbled down the grand staircase, breathless, heart pounding. But just as he reached the front door, every light in the hotel turned on at once. The chandeliers glowed, the lamps flickered, and music, faint, scratchy, like an old record, began playing from the ballroom. A chilling realization crept over him. The hotel wasn't abandoned, it had just been waiting, and now Daniel was the last guest. His camera was later found outside the hotel doors, still recording. The footage, a blurry, shaking image of a shadowy figure standing right behind him. But Daniel? Daniel was never seen again. Story Room 709. The Holloway Grand Hotel had been empty for nearly 40 years. Once a luxurious destination, it shut down abruptly after a tragic incident, though no one could quite agree on what happened. Some say there was a fire, others whisper about a guest who went mad and slaughtered an entire floor. Officially, the hotel was deemed structurally unsafe. But those who dared to break in told a different story. One of them was Ethan Marsh, an amateur ghost hunter who wanted proof that something still lurked inside the Holloway Grand. He wasn't the first to explore the abandoned halls, but he made a crucial mistake. He went to room 709. The moment he stepped inside, he felt it. The air was thick, suffocating, like something unseen was watching him. The furniture was untouched, the bed still neatly made, as if the hotel had never closed. Then, the door slammed shut behind him. Ethan spun around, heart hammering. His flashlight flickered, casting shifting shadows across the walls. The air turned cold, his breath visible in the dim light. And then, he heard it, a soft knock, not on the door, from inside the closet. Ethan swallowed hard. Every instinct screamed at him to leave, but his curiosity won. Slowly, he stepped toward the closet, reaching for the handle. As soon as he touched it, the whispering started. A chorus of voices, some frantic, some amused, some sobbing, flooded the room. They muttered things he couldn't understand, except for one. A single, crystal-clear voice that sent ice through his veins. "Turn around." He did. The closet door swung open behind him, revealing nothing but darkness. And then, something crawled out. Not walked, crawled. Fast, jerky, unnaturally twisted. Long, bony fingers reached for him as a face, gaunt, hollow-eyed, mouth stretched into a sickening grin, emerged from the shadows. Ethan screamed. The next morning, security found the hotel entrance wide open. Ethan's camera was lying just outside, its battery dead. But Ethan himself, gone. The only thing left inside room 709 was the closet door, slightly ajar, as if waiting for the next visitor. Story: the mirror in room 217. The Ridgeway Hotel had been abandoned for over 50 years. The once elegant, towering structure sat on the edge of town, its windows shattered, its halls coated in dust and silence. But locals knew better than to go inside. They whispered about the mirror in room 217. Legend said that back when the hotel was still running, a woman named Margaret Holloway checked into the room, alone. She was seen going inside, but never seen leaving. When the staff finally broke in to check, they found the room completely empty, except for the mirror on the wall. The strange part? The mirror didn't reflect the room correctly. No matter how many guests stayed there afterward, the reflection always seemed off. Some claimed the furniture in the reflection was slightly different. Others swore they saw a woman's silhouette standing in the background, watching them. One night, James Caldwell, a thrill-seeker with a fascination for the paranormal, decided to spend the night in room 217. Armed with his camera, he set up to debunk the legend. At first, nothing happened. Then, at exactly 3:17 a.m., his camera glitched. The screen flickered. His reflection in the mirror didn't move when he did. James stared, breath-catching in his throat. Then, his reflection smiled. Not a normal smile. A wide, twisted, impossible grin that didn't belong to him. And before he could react, his reflection reached out. A pale, thin hand pressed against the glass. From the inside, the surface rippled like water. James stumbled backward as the reflection crawled out, hands gripping the frame, face stretching unnaturally. He tried to scream, but the thing moved too fast. It grabbed him by the wrist, its touch freezing cold, and yanked him toward the mirror. The last thing James saw was his own body, standing still, staring at him from the other side of the glass. The next morning, when his friends came looking for him, they found the room empty. But the mirror? There was a new figure inside it now, standing there, watching. And if you stare long enough, sometimes it moves. Story: the 13th floor. The Everwood Hotel was built in 1910, a grand and luxurious escape for the wealthy. But if you visit the ruins today, you might notice something strange. The hotel only has 12 floors, or at least that's what the blueprints say. But old employees tell a different story. They whisper about a 13th floor that isn't supposed to exist. Guests who took the elevator alone at night reported strange malfunctions. They'd press their floor number, but the elevator wouldn't stop. Instead, it would keep going. Past the 12th floor, the buttons would freeze, the lights would flicker, and then, ding, the doors would open to a dark, empty hallway that wasn't supposed to be there. One night, Aaron Wells, an urban explorer, snuck into the abandoned hotel, determined to find out the truth. He rode the rusted elevator up, filming everything. The ride was normal at first, until he passed the 12th floor. The panel dinged. The number 13 lit up, even though it didn't exist on the building plans. The doors slid open. Aaron stepped into the hallway, flashlight shaking in his grip. The air was thick, heavy, as if the walls themselves were breathing. Rooms lined the corridor, doors slightly ajar. Inside, the furniture was untouched, but everything was wrong. The paintings on the walls were distorted, faces stretched into silent screams. The lamps flickered with a dim, unnatural glow. And then, he heard it. A soft scratching sound, like nails against wood, coming from the end of the hall. Aaron turned his camera toward the noise. Something stood in the shadows. At first, it looked human, a tall, thin figure in an old-fashioned bellhop uniform, but its face was missing. Just smooth, pale skin where eyes, nose, and a mouth should have been. Then, it moved. Aaron turned and ran, sprinting back to the elevator. The figure's footsteps echoed behind him, fast, too fast. He reached the doors, slammed the button, nothing. Then a whisper, right behind him. "Checking out so soon?" A cold hand gripped his shoulder. The screen on his camera glitched, static filled the footage, and then silence. Aaron's body was never found. His camera, however, was discovered on the ground floor, recording one final shot. the elevator doors slowly closing, and a figure in a bellhop uniform standing just inside, waiting. Story: the Do Not Disturb Room. The Silvercrest Hotel closed its doors in 1982 after a series of mysterious deaths. Guests would check in and be found the next morning in their rooms, lifeless, their faces frozen in terror. The hotel shut down, left to decay, but one room remained locked, room 403. Unlike the others, its door was untouched by time. No dust, no peeling paint, and nailed to the wood was a single rusted plaque: Do Not Disturb. Nobody knew what was inside. Nobody dared to break in. Until Mark and Lisa, two urban explorers, decided to do just that. With a crowbar and a camera, they pried open the door. The wood groaned like it was fighting back. And inside, the room was pristine. The bed was made, the furniture polished. A single suitcase sat by the dresser, as if its owner had just stepped out. And on the nightstand, an old-fashioned key with a tag that read 403. Mark picked it up. The moment his fingers touched the cold metal, the hotel came alive. The lights flickered, a radio in the corner turned on by itself, playing an old scratchy tune, and the air grew thick, filled with the scent of rotting flowers. Then, the bathroom door creaked open. Lisa gasped. "Hello?" she whispered. No answer. Mark, still holding the key, turned toward the mirror above the dresser and saw something move behind them. A figure stood in the bathroom doorway, tall, gaunt, dressed in a tattered hotel uniform. Its face was wrong, stretched, hollow, a grin carved too wide, exposing rows of jagged teeth. Mark dropped the key. The figure lurched forward. The radio crackled. The walls shook. A terrible screech filled the room. Mark and Lisa bolted, running for the door. But room 403 wouldn't let them leave. The lock clicked shut. The lights died. And the last thing their camera recorded, before the screen went black, was the Do Not Disturb sign falling to the floor. The next morning, security found the door wide open. The room, completely empty. No furniture, no suitcase, no sign it had ever been used. Only a single key remained, lying in the dust. Its tag still read 403. And if you listen closely, just outside the door, you might hear knocking. Story: the Bellhop. The Ravenswood Hotel was once a luxury retreat in the 1920s, known for its grand ballroom and elegant suites. But in 1935, a fire broke out on the top floor, trapping dozens of guests. The flames burned for hours. When the firemen finally extinguished the inferno, they found no survivors, just charred remains and hallways filled with thick black ash. The hotel never reopened. For years, the building sat in ruin. Locals avoided it, claiming they heard strange noises coming from inside. Faint music, soft footsteps, and most unsettling of all, the sound of a bell ringing in the empty lobby. But that didn't stop Elliot Green, an amateur filmmaker, from exploring it. He wanted to capture proof of the hauntings. He entered through the broken lobby doors, camera rolling. The chandeliers hung crooked, the grand piano sat untouched, and behind the front desk, the old brass bell still rested there, dusted over with time. Then, out of nowhere, ding! The bell rang by itself. Elliot froze. A second later, soft footsteps echoed from the hallway. Slow, methodical, getting closer. He turned his camera toward the sound. At the end of the hall stood a bellhop, dressed in a perfectly pressed uniform, red and gold, just like in the hotel's old photos. But something was wrong. The bellhop wasn't moving. Yet the footsteps continued, step by step by step. And then, the bellhop's head snapped toward him. His face was burned beyond recognition, charred, cracked, with empty black sockets where his eyes should have been. His mouth stretched too wide, revealing a row of jagged teeth. Elliot turned and ran, his breath ragged. He sprinted back through the lobby, past the front desk. Ding! The bell rang again. Elliot didn't stop. He shoved through the doors and into the night. When he finally looked back, the bellhop was standing at the entrance, smiling. His blackened hand slowly lifted and waved. Elliot never spoke of what he saw, but the footage from his camera, it was later found. And at the very end of the recording, right before the screen cut to static, there was one final frame, a burned, grinning face staring directly into the lens, and in the background, faintly but unmistakably, ding. Story: the room that calls you back. The Black Hollow Hotel had been abandoned for nearly 60 years. Once a glamorous retreat, It shut down abruptly after a string of disappearances. Guests would check in but were never seen leaving. No bodies were found, no clues, just empty rooms with the doors wide open, as if inviting the next guest inside. Despite its reputation, urban explorers often snuck in, though most of them refused to stay after sundown. But then there was Noah Carter, a paranormal investigator who wasn't afraid of ghost stories. He should have been. Noah entered through the side entrance, flashlight in hand, camera rolling. Dust covered the grand lobby, furniture draped in white sheets. The air smelled stale, like something had been rotting there for decades. He wandered the halls, peeking into rooms, until he reached room 214. The door was open. Unlike the rest of the hotel, this room looked untouched. The bed was made. The air was crisp, and on the nightstand an old-fashioned rotary phone sat in perfect condition. It rang. Noah's breath caught in his throat. He stared at it. Dust hadn't settled on the phone. No cords connected it to the wall. It rang again, a slow, shrill chime that echoed through the silent halls. Against every instinct, he picked it up. A woman's voice whispered on the other end, "You came back." His stomach dropped. "I've never been here before," he stammered. Silence. Then, "Yes, you have." The line went dead. Noah's flashlight flickered. The air turned frigid. From the corner of the room, the closet door creaked open. Inside, a dark figure stood staring at him. Tall, motionless. Its face wasn't human, just an empty, gaping hole where a mouth should be. The lights cut out. The door slammed shut, and the camera dropped to the floor. The next morning, search crews found Noah's equipment, his flashlight, his camera, even his backpack. But there was no sign of Noah himself. The only clue? The rotary phone on the nightstand. It rang, and when an officer picked it up, a whisper crackled through the line. "You came back." Story: The Forgotten Corridor. The old Wainwright Hotel had stood empty for decades, a grand relic of a bygone era slowly succumbing to decay. Local legend spoke of a cursed corridor, a stretch of hall lined with peeling wallpaper and flickering lights where time itself seemed to warp. They said that anyone who dared walk its length would hear the echoes of voices long past and might never leave. Elias Monroe, a determined urban explorer, ventured into the hotel one stormy night, drawn by the mystery of the forgotten corridor. Armed with nothing but a flashlight and his recorder, he made his way through the abandoned lobby where dust danced in the dim glow of his beam. After exploring empty ballrooms and desolate guest rooms, Elias found himself before a narrow, unmarked hallway, a corridor that wasn't on any of the hotel's original blueprints. With each hesitant step, the atmosphere grew heavier. Faint whispers echoed from behind the cracked walls, murmuring his name as if calling him back. The sound of his own footsteps soon mingled with the soft shuffle of something unseen. At the corridor's end, a weathered door creaked open on its own. Compelled by equal parts dread and curiosity, Elias approached, his heart pounding in time with the thunder outside. The door revealed a room preserved in time, a small parlor with an old phonograph still humming a melancholic tune. Then, in a heartbeat, the door slammed shut behind him, plunging him into darkness. The whispers rose to an urgent chant, and Elias realized too late that he wasn't alone. The voices were not memories at all, but the trapped souls of the hotel, beckoning him to join them in eternal silence. Elias's recorder was later found at the entrance of the corridor, its final moments capturing a distorted, desperate plea. "Don't let us fade, come back." The hotel remains abandoned, and sometimes, if you pass by on a stormy night, you might hear the distant sound of footsteps and a voice calling your name from deep within the forgotten corridor. And that's the chilling tale of the abandoned hotel. Some places never truly stay empty, they just wait for their next guest. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more terrifying tales from Creepy Corner Stories. Until next time, stay curious, stay cautious, and whatever you do, don't check in alone.